to the today's amazing podcast. And today I am truly honored to welcome a remarkable and international professional whose life's work has been dedicated to emotional growth, conscious relationships, and meaningful human connections. Our guest today has over 54 years of experience as a psychotherapist, marriage counselor, and coach. She is the creator of Parenting Consciously, developer of Emotional Realignment, and international professional speaker, a former podcast host of 15 years, and the author of Emotions in Motion, Mastering Lives Built in the Navigation System. She is also a 9-time Amazon best-selling author. Her journey reflects the deep wisdom shaped not only through professional work but also through real life experiences, including the motherhood, teaching, and guiding people through emotional transformation. So, today we will explore emotional intelligence, relationships, conscious parenting, and how understanding emotions can change the way we live and lead. Thank you so much for joining us today, Ilene Dillon, and it's a truly privilege to have you here. So,
Thank you.
first of all, how are you?
I'm doing very well, thank you. Earlier, we're 13 hours apart, so it's my early morning, your evening, your night.
Yeah, yes, here's night and so begin, could you share your personal and professional journey and what first inspired you to dedicate your life to the physiotherapy and emotional growth?
Pain. The answer is pain. I had no. I had a very difficult time figuring out what I was going to do. I changed majors in college 5 times, and I got married very young at the age of 19. I had a very difficult childhood. And then I waited in my marriage for about 7 years, and my husband and I agreed to have a child. And when that child was less than 1 year old, he decided that he wasn't ready to be a father, and he walked out and left us, and we divorced. And that made me very angry. That stimulated me to feel very, very angry that we had agreed to do something that significant, and
Hmm.
and he just quit. And so I've since forgiven him. I'm not carrying that, but um, uh, it led me to be very angry. I didn't realize from my difficult childhood, I had a lot of anger inside of me, and it started flowing out over my child. And I
Yes, I
didn't
understand.
want to do that. So I went and I tried to find out answers to questions. What makes us angry? What are emotions about? How can we work with them? Can we get rid of anger? And I went to major university libraries looking for answers, and there weren't any. So it started me on a hunt, a quest to find out answers to those questions. And that's how I got involved with emotions.
Hmm. Okay, so in short, we can say it was just a pain. So that was
Pain.
incredibly meaningful, and it really shows how personal experiences can shape a lifelong mission of helping others. So, second, now I want to say that you have spent more than 5 decades in this field. And what lessons about the human behavior and emotions have remained constant throughout your journey?
I'm sorry, I didn't quite understand the last part of that question. What
I can, I
would
can
you say it again,
repeat.
please? Yeah, just the
Yes,
last
yes.
part.
Sure. That I can repeat my whole question. I was
Okay.
asking that you have spent more than 5 decades in this field. So, what
Right.
lessons about the human behavior and emotions have remained constant throughout your journey?
Ah, it was the remain constant. Okay, thank you. Um,
Sure.
wow. Well, there's so many. And I'm now 83 years old, and I'm still working because I have learned so many amazing things that make life better that people can do themselves, that I'm dedicated to sharing what I've learned for as long as I can. And mostly what I've learned is that we haven't been told the right information in many cases. For example, one of the things I've been talking about recently is that life is lived. We need to live life from the inside out, not from the outside in.
Yes.
And my example of that is if I'm a person and I think, oh, I need more love in my life, at least in my culture, I don't know if this is true in yours, but in my culture, the job is for me to go out someplace and try to find somebody to love me. But when I do that, saying to myself, I don't, I've got a problem. I'm missing something. And the
Hmm.
principle is that like attracts like. So when I go out missing something, who am I going to find? Another person who's missing love. And then we start having difficulties. On the other hand, if I live my life from the inside out, when I notice I want more love, I give it to myself. I really focus on loving myself. And what happens then is I get filled up with love. The love spills over onto the people around me, and then it gets reflected back to me. And it's a love that nobody can take away from me. And it's not an emptiness, it's a fullness. And so I see a lot of people in relationships, for example, trying to get love from other people when what
Hmm.
they really need to do is start with themselves. And that's information that I think we've been misled with that information.
Hmm. Okay, thank you so much for sharing, and I appreciate how you highlighted the timeless nature of emotional intelligence. Uh, that perspective feels very grounding. So now I want to ask that you developed the concept of emotional realignment. How would you explain this idea to someone who is just beginning to understand their emotions?
Where I start is with my understanding that the earth is a giant school, and we all come here in order to learn and grow.
Yes.
And of the people that I've worked with over the years really dislike making change. We like to figure out something and do it that way and have things work the way we think they ought to work. And growing, as you will know, learning is about making change, about learning new things. And so, uh, in this giant school, we learn by having experiences. And with the experience has emotions, one or more emotion. Like I might be afraid, or I might get angry, or I might feel very loved. And that emotions have been given to us to help us decode, figure out what the experience we're having is trying to teach us. Now, people get afraid that if they go to learn the lesson, they'll get into all kinds of trouble. But what we don't
Hmm.
know is that if you if the lesson comes up and you don't learn it, it goes around again. And every time it goes around, it gets more painful. Uh,
Hmm.
but the second you learn the lesson, it's over and you don't do that anymore. So, or if you're starting with emotions, what I say is pay attention to those emotions. And my book, Emotions and Motions, tells you the message of 12 emotions, and use that to learn and resolve the puzzle that your experience is bringing up. That's the key.
Okay, thanks so much for sharing. So, and that explanation makes the idea feel very practical and accessible, and especially for people who struggle to understand what they feel. So, now many people see emotions as something to control or suppress. So, how does your approach change the way people relate to their emotions?
Well, different people have different ideas of what emotions are. And
Mhm.
again, in the American culture that I have spent most of my time in, um, uh, we we don't have a good definition for emotions. If you go and look it up, it tells you how anger behaves. It doesn't tell you
Yes,
what anger is. What
yes.
I believe is that emotions are energy. And likely you have studied this in school already. We know a few things about energy. We know you can't create it, you can't destroy it, it has to move, and you can translate it into another kind of energy. And that's what happens with emotions. If I feel angry, I can't totally get rid of it because I can't destroy it, but I can work with it as energy. And so my aim will be to use the emotion that comes up in me. And when I do, that releases its energy and it drops away. My favorite example is about loneliness.
Hmm.
In the US, people are talking about an epidemic of loneliness right now, and people are advised, go find some people and spend time with them, then your loneliness will go away. Well, it doesn't always, because when you look at loneliness in energy terms, loneliness is tells us that we have more of our energy going out than coming back in. Or translated, we're not loving ourselves enough. And the way we can reverse that is by doing something for which we have a talent or something we love to do. And when we bring that loving energy into ourselves, loneliness just dissipates, it just falls away.
Okay, that's all right. And I really value that shift in perspective and seeing emotions as guidance rather than problems. So, in today's fast-paced world, what emotional habits do you think people need to relearn or rebuild?
Well, many people need to relearn, don't hold on to emotions, don't keep them inside,
Hmm.
particularly where anger is concerned. If Since emotions are energy, let me use the example of water. If I have
Hmm.
some water running in a stream and I put a dam over it, I stop the water builds up and creates a lake, or a body of water, and that water is constantly against what I've built here, this dam is constantly trying to find a way to get out. It's trying to find an escape. Now, if the water can find a problem with the dam, it can work it and escape, and it can create a lot of destruction on the other side because all this water will run through. That's
Hmm.
the same thing that happens when we hold anger inside of us. We hold it inside, it builds up, and it's constantly looking for a way to get out of us. And when it does, it can be very destructive. We recently, in the last few years, have research results that tell us that repressed anger, the anger we hold inside, is one of the factors for creating life threatening diseases such as diabetes, heart and circulatory
Hmm.
illnesses, and cancer. In other words, when you hold anger inside, you hold it long enough, it literally can kill you. And that's important to know. And once we look at anger as energy, then we let it move. And I want to say one more thing, which is that emotions are not positive or negative. A lot of people talk about anger as a negative emotion. That's like saying water is negative because it's an energy. Well, it can behave negatively, but in and of itself, it's just energy. It's not negative, and the same is true for emotions.
Okay, and our explanation will help us to understand betterly, and this that insight feels especially relevant right now, and when many people feel overwhelmed but don't always know that why. So now I want to move to the next section where I want to talk about the relationships and marriage counseling. So, as a marriage counselor, what pattern do you most often see that either strengthen or damage the relationships?
Can you say that one more time? I'm not sure I got exactly what you're asking me. Just at the very end, what start with the
No,
what? The what?
no issue. I can repeat my question. I was
Okay.
asking that as a marriage counselor, what patterns do
hmm
you most often see that either strengthen or damage relationships?
Okay. Um, what pattern do I most often see? Oh my goodness. Um, oh, there are two or three things that number one is that many people don't know how relationships work.
Yes.
When we have problems in relationships, it's really about helping us to grow. when when we're in long-term relationships, like with parents or with children or with friends or people we work with, those are the places where we do most of our learning, because we bump up against other people. And many people believe that when they bump up against the person they're married to, there's something wrong and they should get out. Well, it's not really something wrong. It's like, okay, I'm in a long term relationship with you, and I'm doing this to you, telling you there's something you need to learn. And if you pay attention and learn, then our issue goes away. And by the way, children do that for their parents also.
Hmm. Okay, that's it. That is a powerful observation, and it highlights the how small emotions habitat can change the long-term connection. So now I want to say that what role does emotional awareness play in resolving the conflict within relationships?
Well, back to the giant school, I'm a learner. And who's responsible? When you go to school, who's responsible for your learning? Is it the teachers that are teaching you, or is it you that opens yourself to do the learning and does the work of the homework, learning
Yeah.
from that person? Right.
Yes.
Well,
Yeah.
in relationships, people most often say, I'm not feeling good, so you have to change. And
Yes.
that's not the same pattern for learning that works for you at school. What I need to do if I have a problem with you is I go, what do I need to learn here? I had an argument with my husband many years ago, and after we, said things back and forth, I went and sat down and said, he's not realizing who I really am. He's not respecting me for who I really am.
Hmm.
And then as I sat there, I realized, wait a minute, if I'm seeing that and want him to change, what's there for me to learn? And what I realized is that I wasn't seeing all of who I really am, and I wasn't honoring who I really am. Like I wasn't putting my message out strongly enough. I was kind of holding back. So instead of going back and saying, you need to change, I started changing by putting my message out more strongly, by recognizing, telling myself who I am. I'm a person who has some very wonderful information here that can help people. And that's what I'm going to do. And
Yes.
that's what we need to do in relationships is, okay, if you're my husband and I have a problem with you, I not only I can look at the problem I have with you, but I also need to look at what do I need to learn, because this is happening in my life and giving me an opportunity to grow and change.
Okay, that's it. I appreciate how you form conflict as an opportunity for an understanding rather than something purely negative. So now, you created a system called parenting consciously. So, what inspired you to develop this approach?
The fact that my husband left me with a child and I had no family around me, and I thought, oh
Mhm.
my gosh, it's my job to raise this child. What's important here? How do I want to do this? Because I wasn't all the way happy with the way my parents had raised me. And so I started looking at, my parents did an okay job, but there were things that were important to me that I wanted to be different.
Yes.
And what I found was that my parents and my grandparents, they raised children by situation. They say, someday you're going to be in this situation, and here is how you handle it. And that was in the 1970s. And already back then, I realized the world was changing really fast, which meant that the children I would raise, might have no idea of what kind of situations they were going to get themselves into or be, would be part of their world. And
Hmm.
so instead of me telling them how to deal with specific situations, I needed to equip them with something inside of themselves that they could draw from. And
Hmm.
I decided it was the ability to make choices and deal with the consequences of those choices and continue to love themselves. And that was the basis of my method.
Okay, that's great. And that perspective really expands the parenting beyond rules and into emotional awareness. So now I'm going to ask that what is the one mistake parents often make when trying to guide their children's emotionally?
They don't respect who their children are. And I don't mean that in a mean or, trying to judge anybody.
Hmm.
Most of us are not aware of who children are.
Yes.
Children are souls, in my view. Children are souls and they're in little bodies, but they're a soul as strong as your soul, or as strong as mine. Just because I'm in a bigger body doesn't make me have more essence.
I understand.
And so we don't recognize that children are uh, here in order, and our job as parents is to help them lay a foundation when they get here so that they can have a good life, so that they can have a life of learning, so that they can have a life of spiritual meaning for themselves. And that's our job, and we need to start recognizing who they are. I've recently been writing about two experiences that I had in my own life where my children, one was 3 years old and one was 10, they made decisions and took actions that, like my son, for example, when he was 3, he put himself in the position I was in when I was 3, 35 years before he was born, right? So that I could learn. And when I asked him, my parents came for a visit and we had some difficulties. And I had a stepmother. I lost my birth mother when I was very young. And so after they left, I asked my son, "What do you think was going on?" This is a 3-year old. And he said, "Grandma and Grandpa were really mad at you when you were little. And he
Hmm.
had just taken me, he'd just done some things to stimulate anger in me. And my father was saying, well, he's just like you were, right?" So he played the whole thing out when he
Yes.
would have no way of knowing what happened 35 years before he was born. And you get how powerful that is, that just because you're in a small body, you can still be helping somebody to learn.
Yes. Okay, that's great. So now I think I have some time left for my interview. So now, for young people who feel emotionally lost or disconnected, so what first step would you encourage them to take?
Read my book. Of course. I interviewed a man who was an expert on sleep one time, and that's what he advised everybody, was read his book. So that makes it funny to me. But seriously, you need to know more about emotions. And we are in a time of tremendous change. I don't think any place on this planet is not undergoing change right now. And all of us humans undergoing big change. And so it's time for us to recognize how to work better with energy, because we are energy beings. Vibration is part of who we are. Emotions are energy. And the fastest way to do this growing is to use emotions to grow with. So to I'm working very diligently right now to share with the world that emotions are tools to help us live a better life. And when we accept that they're real, we know that they have a message for us, we let them come up in our bodies, we use them to learn our lessons, and then
Mm.
dissipate and we move on. That's what we need to do. So any young person can start by saying, what am I feeling? Where am I feeling it in my body? What might it be telling me? Or we can also ask the question, what could I possibly be trying to teach myself by having this feeling or this experience?
Yes. Okay, that's great. And that was advice feels very practical and sportive, something that listeners can start applying immediately. And I will suggest and highly recommend you all to view his book. And she will share her book in the comments of this podcast. I will tag you in this podcast, and you can share in the comments. Okay, your book. Okay, and. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and all the details and all your experience and your deeply thoughtful perspective with us today. And this conversation reminds us that emotions are not obstacles, they are signals guiding us toward understanding, connection, and growth. Your work over the past 5 decades has clearly helped countless people rethink how they relate to themselves and to others. It was truly been an honor hosting you. Thank you so much for your time and your insights and your meaningful impact you continue to create the world. So thank you so much. Bye bye.
My pleasure, Hesham.